Hi, Kelly Morgan here. And today we're going to talk about the 4 worksheets. These will be coming to you in a Google Doc. And if you fill out these 4 worksheets, you will essentially have a map of how to write your blueprint. So let's talk about this. Now, in my Map Your Memoir program, you've probably gotten this toward the middle of the weeks that you've been working on this, so you know what things are. But even if you've never been in a memoir class of mine, you can do this worksheet or these 4 worksheets. As always, when doing a Google Doc, if you want to fill it in right on this document, what you'll want to do is make a copy of this document in your Google Docs and then edit it there. Or you can print it out and fill it out by hand. The nice thing, and we've talked about this, and if you know me at all, in other workshops, we've talked about how writing by hand can bring in thoughts that you didn't have otherwise. Now, the first worksheet that you'll have on this is called the answer sheet, and it's your book fundamentals. And you've been answering these questions as we've gone along in the Map Your Memoir. But again, if you haven't taken this, I would say first thought, best thought. Why write this book? What does it mean to you on a deeply personal level? That's internally, and then externally. Like maybe you want to make more money, make a name for yourself as an expert or an authority. Maybe you internally want to make sense of things that have happened in your life. And more questions on this worksheet are: what's your point? Write a super simple version of your story. Are you only telling your story, and is that story true? Choose a working title. Where will your book sit on the shelf? Who is your ideal reader, and what do they want? Now, as you know, many of these things will be explained in much more depth in my handout. So the handout and these 4 worksheets are different. Or in one of Jenny Nash's books, this particular one that we're using in Map Your Memoir is a book by Jenny Nash, Blueprint for a Memoir, How to Write a Memoir for the Marketplace. Hopefully there will be a link in this section so that you can go on Amazon or wherever you shop for books and buy this wonderful book. Okay. And I think what's very cool about this particular book, Blueprint for a Memoir, is that the subtitle is How to Write a Memoir for the Marketplace. If you're not writing a memoir for the marketplace, I think going to my companion handout will work fine. Other questions: what other books speak to your ideal reader? How will you connect with your ideal reader? Decide on a time frame. I have to speak about this for a moment. No matter where you are in the course, finding one main story to tell is the difference between memoir and autobiography. I don't have any problem with you writing an autobiography. An autobiography can start when you were born and then go on all the way till you die. Now, usually autobiographies are done for your family if you're not famous, and if you are famous, you or a celebrity, then you can pretty much organize it like that. The big thing here is, where are you standing in time as you tell your tale? I mean, really, what time is it in the afternoon? What afternoon is it? You want to have a time frame when your story begins, not just, well, I was thinking after my mom died that maybe I should start dating again. I hadn't dated in a long time. No, that's too abstract. What I would want you to do is say, I broke my foot, and on a Sunday afternoon, out of boredom, on this Sunday afternoon, out of boredom, I flipped on the TV to watch The Bachelorette rerun. And that's when it hit me. All those bachelorettes were talking about finding a husband, and I had never once, and I was 57 years old, dated with the idea of finding a husband. So where am I standing? Oh, I'm not standing. I'm laying in my bed watching it, and I have a broken foot. You see, by getting very specific on that, it will help. Now, if you can't get specific, be general, but come back here as you become more and more clear on what your story is. Chronology of your story, it happened, that happened, and then something else after that happened, and then something else happened, right? That's your outside chronology. And there will also be my inner thoughts, which is called subjective writing, as I do that chronology. Fractured narrative, we'll talk about somewhere else. You probably don't need to work with that right now, unless you've written a memoir before or you're an advanced writer. Now, think conceptually about your content. Will your story be organized by any kind of concept? Well, somewhat conceptual, in that I'm only going to write about dating. But a better example, can't think of a memoir offhand, but a better example of that is I taught The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is a wonderful book if you come up against any of your procrastination or doubts or perfectionism. That's a wonderful course. And it's by Julia Cameron. And I love how she organized it, probably because I was in a 12-step program at the time. And she loosely used the 12 steps of all program and the steps to organize her book. It's not obvious, but if you know about that, you will know that she organized her steps that way. If you get to the map the arc of change, I want you to go to character arc map, and that's worksheet 3, which is also in this packet. Okay. To create the impact outline, you're going to go to worksheet number 4, which is in this packet. You can write, draw, create a book jacket copy. You've come up with titles. This is optional. And creating sample chapters for your memoir opening and ending. I would say at the minimum, an opening chapter and an ending chapter. And if we're working together in private sessions, then I would like 3 openings and 3 endings. Okay, worksheet number 2 is the journey, which was the hero's journey, which was developed by Joseph Campbell. And it's what we call the story arc. Now, there's a lot more information about this in the handout. The handout is a companion piece to these worksheets. All I want you to worry about in the worksheets is filling out answers. And if you have to go back to the handouts to learn more, awesome. I also, on this worksheet, repeated all of the stages in this chart that take you from your ordinary world, special world, all the way back to your ordinary world by explaining what each of these segments of the chart are and asking you a question about it. So again, fill this in: first thought, best thought, refusal of the call, meeting the mentor, crossing the first threshold. I'm not going to go into it. Inner and outer tests. Approach the innermost cave. This is where people can get in a little trouble. And here you'll see it as it's called just small approach. And this often is an ordeal. And if you go through the ordeal, you're initiated into a new way of being, and you often get a reward for that. Okay. So just to give you an example of mine and my story, in approach to the inmost cave, I have to see that it's not really working. And I remember I'm sleeping in bed one night and I pray to God. I actually get on my knees because I can be a little dramatic at times. And I said, hey, God, I give up. I'm not going to try to control all of this. Please help me be open to whatever comes. If I have to move, whatever I have to do to find the right mate. Okay. And that brought in some new challenges. Okay. The whole book is built up to reaching this toward the center or towards the end of the middle. Meanwhile, in your inner world, the challenges are fears, doubts, perfectionism, self-sabotage, procrastination, suffering, addictions. And if I go back to this hero's journey here, you're safe. You're so safe in whatever journey you're going to start. You could fall asleep. You're in a job you're bored with. You're in a marriage, you just hate, you can't stand, you just have to get out of it. Or you're going to college and you're having a really hard time. Okay. And then you're safe though, even though you're in this struggle and even though there might be some pain, you're safe because you're comfortable zone. Now you go through this and you can't wait on some level to be safe again. And you'll stay there until your heart or your mind or whatever calls you to start out on another journey. So this is an ever-ending spiral of journeys, both inner and outer journeys, and your ordinary world, what is there and what is in your special world. So when I talk about you going through your resurrection, what's the final hurdle between you and getting back to safety? Reward is, what have you learned? I met Russ and I learned a lot from going with him, but I also applied a lot of what I've learned from dating others. Okay. And then how am I transformed when I came home to dating Russ regularly or to when I married him? I might want to come up with a scene about that. I do remember there's a scene where he proposed. I could use that. It was out in a park. It was one afternoon and we came across a heart made in stones. Or I could use another point. These are decisions and choice decisions, things you'll have to choose. And a lot of people tell me making decisions is their hardest thing. I can totally relate. Worksheet number 3, the character arc. Again, there's a lot more information on this character arc in the handout. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just going to briefly say it walks you through. At the beginning of the journey, which is the character arc, is the same as the hero's arc, where you're at home, you're bored, you're in your comfort zone, and then you're leaving home or not accepting the call. And how do you change? Well, when you start, you have a limited awareness of what all this is going to involve. Now, like me, I'm not totally ignorant like I was when I started dating at 20. That would be a whole different story. And I actually did get engaged a couple of times back then, but I didn't know what I wanted. And they didn't have, those marriages did not happen. Whereas by now, I pretty much know what I want in a mate, but I don't know if it's out there. I've never dated. So what am I in for? Well, less dancing, more, will I have to give up things? Yes. So you want to do it for the story that you're writing about. And it goes through all the changes on there. Again, you can work with me on this or go back to the handout. And that brings us to worksheet number 4. This is the most, in some ways, the most interesting worksheet for those of you who are working on your character arc. And you may want to even work on this one before you fill in all the stages of transformation. It can go either way. But in this, you're going to write what happened, what it meant to you, and why the reader should care. And again, this is a Jenny Nash worksheet from her series of books on how to write a book, memoir, nonfiction book, or a fiction book. Jenny Nash. You can go to her website. She also has Author Accelerator, which is if you want to become a coach for book writers. So this, she suggests that you fit everything in 3 pages. And here's the worksheet. Timestamp. What exact day? That's what makes a scene, is a timestamp. On a Sunday afternoon, I was in bed with my foot up on a pillow, was in a cast, my foot that is, and I was watching a rerun of The Bachelorette, and it hit me. I watched many shows about that before, that all of the women set an intention of finding a husband. I had never done that back as far as I could remember, and here I was, 57. I had dated more as an invention. Let's see, it may end in marriage or it may not, but I never had that intention. And I further explain it here. It's a choice, an opportunity, trauma, passion, turning point, first thought, best thought. How did you feel about what happened at the time? How did you make meaning of what happened? And impact. Why should the reader care? Remember, this is especially important if you're writing a memoir for a reader. And how does this connect to your memoir's larger point? Quick reminder, you're going to, every time you finish writing this, you're going to repeat. And because of that experience, and then you do repeat the process, and because of that experience. And what I'm saying is, you're going to do this several times until you fill up 3 pages. This will give your table of contents for your book and will be what you need in order to go into a memoir writing class, because then you'll have some scenes that you can work on as we pursue other things and we write together. Okay, any questions? Drop me an email, give me a call, and I think that's it. Yes, so have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.